Hey again. Okay, so right now we are going to start chapter 1 of The Thief of Always. Now, you can do this read aloud a couple of different ways. You can close your eyes, listen to the sounds of my voice. You can read along with me. I'm going to actually have the book on the screen, or you can mute my voice and read this on your own. It's totally up to you. This is a harder book, kind of the same reading level as the Westing game. So, again, this might be a little bit confusing in the beginning, and that's okay because you should be confused at the beginning of a book in order to find out what's happening. Before we start this chapter, I just want you to think for a second. We're all stuck in our houses right now. And I am sure that you're bored of being bored. And, I know for my own children, I keep trying to suggest things to do and they roll their eyes because they're just so bored of cleaning their room or bored of reading a book or just bored. I want you to keep that in your mind because Harvey in this chapter is just like you guys probably sitting at home. And it's just feeling that feeling. Okay. So here we go. Chapter 1. I'm going to read off of my book. It's easier. Old eyes. Okay. The great gray beast, February, had eaten Harvey Swick alive. Here he was, buried in the belly of that smothering month, wondering if he would ever find his way out through the cold coils that lay between here and Easter. He didn't think much of his chances. More than likely, he'd become so bored as the hours crawled by that one day he'd simply forget to breathe. Then maybe people would get to wondering why such a fine young lad had perished in his prime. It would become a celebrated mystery, which wouldn't be solved until some great detective decided to recreate a day in Harvey's life. Then, and only then, would the grim truth be discovered. The detective would first follow Harvey's route to school every morning, trekking through the dismal streets. Then he'd sit at Harvey's desk and listen to the pitiful drone of the history teacher and the science teacher and wonder how the heroic boy had managed to keep his eyes open. And finally, as the wasted day dwindled to dusk, he'd trace the homeward trek. And as he set foot on the step from which he had departed that morning, and people asked him, as they would, why would such a sweet soul as Harvey had died? He would shake his head and say, it's very simple. Oh, the curious crowd would say, do tell. And brushing away a tear, the detective would reply, Harvey Swick was eaten by the great gray beast, February. Now, is February really eating him? No. Harvey's imagining his life is so boring that even if a detective had to figure out why it was boring, he would just be sad for him. Okay, back to the story. It was a monstrous month, that was for sure. A dire and dreary month. The pleasures of Christmas, both sharp and sweet, were already dimming in Harvey's memory, and the promise of summer was so remote as to be mythical. There'd be a spring break, of course, but how far off was that? 5 weeks? 6? Mathematics wasn't his strong point, so he didn't irritate himself further by attempting and failing to calculate the days. He simply knew that long before the sun came to save him, he would have withered away in the belly of the beast. Harvey is quite dramatic. You shouldn't waste your time sitting up here, his mom said when she came in and found him watching the raindrops chase each other down the glass of his bedroom window. I've got nothing better to do, Harvey said without looking around. Well then, you can make yourself useful, his mom said. Harvey shuddered. Useful. That was another word for hard labor. He sprang up, marshaling his excuses. He hadn't done this, he hadn't done that, but it was too late. You can start by tidying up the room, his mom said. But don't sit wishing the days away, honey. Life's too short. But that's a good boy. And with that, she left him to it, muttering to himself. He stared around the room. It wasn't even untidy. There were one or two games scattered around, a couple of drawers open, a few clothes hanging out. It looked just fine. I am 10, he said to himself. Having no brothers or sisters, he talked to himself a good deal. I mean, it's not like I'm a kid. I don't have to tidy up just because she says so. It's boring. He wasn't just muttering now, he was talking out loud. I want to, I want to. He went to the mirror and quizzed it. What do I want? The straw haired, snub nosed, brown eyed boy he saw before him shook his head. I don't know what I want, he said. I just know I'll die if I don't have some fun. I will die. As he spoke, the window rattled. A gust of wind blew hard against it. Then a second, then a third. And even though Harvey didn't remember the window being so much as an inch ajar, it was suddenly thrown open. Cold rain splattered his face. Half closing his eyes, he crossed to the window and fumbled to slam it, making sure that the latch was in place this time. The wind had started his lamp moving, and when he turned back, the whole room seemed to be swinging around. One moment the light was blazing in his eyes, the next it was flooding the opposite wall. But in between the blaze and the flood, it lit the middle of the room, and standing there, shaking the rain off his hat, was a stranger? He's looking outside. Rain, like the window blows open, and there's a guy standing in his bedroom. Stranger danger. Okay. He looked harmless enough. He was no more than 6 inches taller than Harvey. His frame scrawny, his skin distinctly yellowish in color. He was wearing a fancy suit, a pair of spectacles, and a lavish smile. Who are you? Harvey demanded, wondering how he could get past this interloper to the door. Interloper would be like a burglar. Don't be nervous, the man replied, teasing off one of his suede gloves, taking Harvey's hand and shaking it. My name's Rictus. You are Harvey Swick, aren't you? Yes. I thought for a moment I'd got the wrong house. Harvey couldn't take his eyes off Rictus's grin. It was wide enough to shame a shark, with 2 perfect rows of gleaming teeth. Rictus took off his spectacles, pulled a handkerchief from his pocket of his waterlogged jacket, then started to mop off the raindrops. Either he or the handkerchief gave an odor that was far from fragrant. The smell, in truth, was flatulent. That's a fancy word for farts. You've got questions. I can see that, Rictus said to Harvey. Yeah. Ask away. I've got nothing to hide. Well, how did you get in, for one thing? Through the window, of course. It's a long way up from the street. Not if you're flying. Flying? Of course. How else was I going to get around on a foul night like this? It was either that or a rowboat. We short folk gotta watch out when it's raining this hard. One wrong step and you're swimming. He peered at Harvey quizzically. Do you like to swim? In the summer sometimes, Harvey replied, wanting to get back to the business of flying. But Rictus took the conversation in another direction entirely. On nights like this, he said, doesn't it seem like there'll never be another summer? It sure does, said Harvey. You know, I heard you sighing a mile off, and I said to myself, there's a kid who needs a vacation. He consulted his watch. If you got the time, that is. The time? For a trip, boy, for a trip. You need an adventure, young Swick. Somewhere out of this world. How'd you hear me sighing when you were a mile away? Harvey wanted to know. Why should you care? I heard you. That's all that matters. Is it magic of some kind? Maybe. Why won't you tell me? Rictus gave Harvey a beady stare. I think you're too inquisitive for your own good. That's why, he said, his smile decaying a little. If you don't want to help, that's fine by me. He made a move toward the window. The wind was still gusting against the glass, as though eager to come back in and carry its passenger away. Wait, Harvey said. For what? I'm sorry, I won't ask any more questions. Rictus halted, his hand on the latch. No more questions, eh? I promise, said Harvey. I told you, I'm sorry. So you did. So you did. Rictus peered out at the rain. I know a place where the days are always sunny, he said, and the nights are full of wonders. Can you take me there? We said no questions, boy. We agreed. Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. Being a forgiving sort, I'll forget you spoke. And I'll tell you this. If you want me to inquire on your behalf, I'll see if they got room for another guest. I'd like that. Not guaranteeing anything, Rictus said, opening the latch. I understand. The wind gusted suddenly and blew the window wide. The light began to swing wildly. Watch for me, Rictus yelled above the din of the rain and wind. Harvey started to ask if he'd be coming back soon, but he stopped himself in the nick of time. No questions, boy, Rictus said, and as he spoke, the wind seemed to fill up his coat. It rose around him like a black balloon, and he was suddenly swept out over the windowsill. Questions rot the mind, he hollered as he went. Keep your mouth shut, and we'll see what comes your way. And with that, the wind carried him off, the balloon of his coat rising like a black moon against the rainy sky. And that's the end of chapter 1. There's a lot going on there. First off, he's complaining of being bored. A stranger appears in his window through flying, is saying that maybe he could check him in somewhere or go somewhere. Here's what I need you to do right now. On CCS Connect, or also in Google Classroom, it's a new topic. It'll be on the top row, but right now it's down here. It's called Reading Workshop 4. You are going to, right here it says The Thief of Always, Chapter 1, Summary and Questions. This is a very intense book. So this is kind of like a summary, a snapshot of the important part of the chapter. And then there are these 5 questions. You need to answer these 5 questions either in Google Docs or on paper or right here on the sheet in Notability and email them back to me. They need to be in complete sentences. Happy reading. I can't wait to read chapter 2 with you guys. Have a great day.